Okay, so our stock is done. We've separated it out, and the way you do that is just by pouring all of the stock into a colander that's inside of a bowl to catch everything, and then you can throw out all the stuff that you use to flavor your stock. This is just a little bit of what it looks like. Ow, it's still very hot because I just did it. And we're going to use hot stock to make our gravy. So we're going to get a small saucepan, put a small heat on it, and we're going to take the drippings and fat that we took off of our baking sheet after roasting all of the turkey and vegetables, and we're going to strain them into this pot because that's what we're using as our fat to thicken everything. Okay, we want to get that nice and hot so that it's really simmering. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a roux to start thickening our gravy. And the whole idea of a roux is that you just add a little bit of flour at a time to the fat. And you want it to be roughly equal parts flour and fat. The only way to do this by eye, because there was no way of measuring the difference in fat to drippings, is to kind of do it, just add it slowly and see how thick it gets. You want the roux to get almost balled up, looking like a dough, before we add our stock to it to make a proper gravy. Okay, so this could use a little more flour, and you really want to cook the flour a few minutes because we want to get that kind of stale flavor, that floury flavor, cooked out. And you also don't want to have lumps in your gravy. Lumpy gravy. I think that's a Frank Zappa album. Maybe it's The Dead. Okay, and so now this is starting to look really thick. This is what your roux should look like. So let's just cook it off a little more. And my whisk broke, and I'm waiting on my new whisk to arrive, and it hasn't yet. So I'm using this kind of broke-ass whisk. It broke right in my hand, which is really crazy. Okay, now that we have our roux bubbling, we're going to add our stock. How much stock? Depends on how many people you're feeding and how much gravy you want to make. So we're just going to add kind of a bit at a time and start whisking. And this is going to give you like the most flavorful gravy because it's all homemade stock, using all the pan drippings from our roasting pan. Now what I'm going to do is, since I'm making this tonight and Thanksgiving isn't till tomorrow, I'm going to actually save some leftover stock to use when I go to heat the gravy tomorrow. So I have a whole bunch of stock left over, and because this will thicken in the fridge, and as the fats congeal, it'll get thick. So tomorrow when we go to heat everything up, and while the turkey is roasting, we'll be able to kind of revive this gravy with the stock that we use to cook it, which will be super flavorful. Let me grab spatula because we have some roux that's sticking a little to the bottom of the pan. And the other thing we're going to do before we put this down to cool and sort of congeal for the night is we're going to add an herb trio. We're going to add a little bit of sage, a little bit of thyme, and a little bit of rosemary. And we're just going to do kind of like a sprig of each. And just as this cools off, it'll take on the flavor of it. And we'll let it sit in it overnight. And then tomorrow, before we go to reheat it, we'll just take each sprig out. So it won't be this like overpowering herb flavor. Okay, you see this is getting just a little thicker. And again, it's going to thicken as it goes, so it's okay that it's a little light now. Let's get just half a sprig of rosemary and a little bit of thyme. We got nothing but thyme. It's quarantine, right? Let's get a little more thyme. Okay, and I'm going to just let this kind of set up. I'm going to add some fresh cracked black pepper, but that's just for seasoning it overnight. Tomorrow, before we serve it, is when we're really going to taste it and season it. And there you have your gravy, perfect for your mashed potatoes and turkey and whatever else you like putting gravy on. So see you tomorrow on Thanksgiving.